welcome to 3D Movie Cinema, the only show that's 3 dimensions away from The Dark Knight Rises being called The Dark Knight Returns. I'm your host 3D Jake, and today we're looking at The Dark Knight Rises, released in 2012. The Dark Knight Rises is directed once again by Christopher Nolan, and is written by Christopher Nolan and his brother Jonathan Nolan, from a story by Christopher Nolan and David S. Goyer. The movie stars once again Christian Bale, Michael Caine, Gary Oldman, this time around joined by Anne Hathaway, Tom Hardy, Maria Cotillard, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, and Morgan Freeman. The movie is essentially the final chapter in the Dark Knight trilogy, essentially where Bruce Wayne, after years, has been basically AFK, and it's been like 8 years, and basically the Harvey Dent Act, where all the cops have cleaned up the streets, and all the citizens, no one commits crimes, the mob's gone, all the criminals are gone, basically, and everybody's in prison, and the people that are criminals cannot get out because of the Dent Act. And so basically when a mercenary named Bane comes into town and basically beats Batman and blows up all the bridges and kills and locks all the cops down in the sewers and basically takes over the city, letting all the criminals out, and basically overtakes the city, it's up to Batman to come out of retirement and basically, bring Bane to justice. I love this movie, okay? When it first came out, I was so hyped for this movie because I love The Dark Knight so much. I've watched Dark Knight a million times, and I was like, I cannot wait to see the conclusion. And you got Bane. I remember just seeing the first images on Bane. My mom asked, can I use her cell phone just so I could look at the images of Bane and seeing the teaser, because I didn't have a cell phone or a laptop. And so I'm like, hey mom, can I look at the Dark Knight Rises teaser? And then I watched it on her phone, and I'm like, oh, it's so cool. I can't wait. Because it was like the first teaser, just Gary Oldman in on a hospital bed, going saying something, and you just see flashes, and you see Christian Bale doing push-ups, and you see flash, and then you see distorted images of Bane, and then you see the Batman symbol rising, it's going up, and all the buildings collapsing above it, and then you just hear the Manolo, Bane, and then you just see Bane walking up as Batman's about ready to fight him. I'm like, that right there, I was so excited, and it wasn't until literally Sherlock Holmes A Game of Shadows was coming out, where you had to go watch that movie in theaters to see the first trailer. And I remember it leaked online where you could watch the trailer, and then finally when it came out a week later, and I watched the trailer on my mom's phone, oh my god, I could not wait. Especially seeing Anne Hathaway as Catwoman, see Bane in full-fledged and everything. I could not wait. I'm like, I cannot wait for this movie. And then of course, I remember just begging my mom, when this movie came out, took her to the toy store. I'm like, Mom, can I please have a Bane? I really want a Bane figure. And she bought me a Bane figure, and everything. And I remember she was just I was it was $20, and she was like, it's $20 for a Bane figure. I'm like, I know, but I want Bane. I remember coming home and just playing with the Bane figure, and I was so excited to play with Bane, and everything. And I'm like, oh my god, I had the Bane finally. And then of course I remember my mom got me this for the following year after the movie came out. I got this for Christmas, this shirt with Batman and Bane on it. And I always loved this movie. This movie, I always love it. I know some people have a love-hate relationship with this movie. I know my friend, my co-host on Small Zero, Matt Wyatt, he does not really like this movie that much. He thinks it's the weakest in the trilogy, and I understand. It's not for everyone. I do think that what I like about this movie is that it is literally it's a tale of two cities, okay? And it's like this man, and I like that it takes a lot of inspiration from A Tale of Two Cities, and it takes place a lot of inspiration from The Dark Knight Returns, where Batman's gone, he's been AFK, and then when he returns, he has to overcome this, big threat, and Bane is essentially the leader, of the mutants, and Bane is basic, but instead of using the mutants and the leader, they basically have Bane. And I like that, because there was rumors going around who Tom Hardy was going to play. Was he going to play Hugo Strange, was the biggest rumor. And then, of course, we everybody thought, oh, they're going to make a sequel, it's got the Riddler. And instead, no, it was Bane. And I'm like, I'm so glad that Christopher Nolan did Bane, because Bane is such a cool character. And the last time we saw Bane on screen was in Batman and Robin. He was just a henchman that made grunting noises. And I this was really great and everything. And I remember seeing this in theater, and this is after something tragic had happened, because the Colorado shooting had happened, the Aurora, Colorado shooting, and it was really damaging. A lot of people were scared. And I remember watching, I saw there was the cops everywhere when we went to see this movie, but I'm like, I don't care. I want to see Batman. And it was really sad what happened, because it was all over the news. Was about the shooting in Colorado, because people just wanted to go watch this movie to see the conclusion of this epic trilogy, and it was at midnight too. And then of course some asshole come in and shot up the theater, and I really feel like that. And my heart goes out to those people that lost people that were just going to experience Batman for the first time. And I think that, it really sucks that they never got to really enjoy the movie in theaters because some asshole had to ruin it for them, and they had lost people who just wanted to go watch a movie about Batman. And, and it really sucks. And a lot of things that happened that movie, they had a Gangster Squad, which was a movie that, come out with Emma Stone and Ryan Gosling that basically had a scene where they were shooting through the theater and killing like the cops and stuff in the movie, while they actually had to go reshoot the movie because of that, the shooting in Colorado. And really, just it's really a sad, tragic thing. And I'm glad that, that this movie didn't like get, oh, we pulled it out of theaters and stuff, or the movie actually still got to enjoy it. And I know a lot of people were kind of like, we're like, oh, this movie might have made $2 billion, and unfortunately after the shooting and everything, a lot of people didn't want to go see it because of that. And I understand that, but I mean, it still made $1 billion. And look, I was like kind of scared, want to see it because I'm like, oh my God, it's, and I remember telling my uncle, I'm like, me and my uncle went and saw it. My uncle, I said, what happens if the shooter? And he says, I'm gonna use you as a human shield. That's what I'm gonna do, and then go for the exit. I'm like, oh damn. I was like, but he was joking, of course, even though, which he always, he always was like that. He likes to make he likes to make jokes, like for, because he can't process humor, so it's like, make just jokes for like awkward moments, and I remember watching this movie though. I had the worst cough of my life. I was just coughing, crouping. It was like, but I still enjoyed this movie though. I was like watching it and I was really enjoying it. I do like, when Batman comes back at the beginning of this movie, like how he's sitting there, like, whenever Bane robs like this. And by the way, he takes his helmet, busts this woman in the face and breaks her jaw, and then basically knocks over a thing, and a guy pulls the gun and shoots the guy. And I'm like, how come no one heard the gunshot? Like, literally. It's not until they walk into like the exchange. I understand people are yelling and everything like that, but like you would hear a gunshot and people are like, "Oh my God, there's a gunshot at Wall Street." And I do like when Batman does show up and you hear the Batman theme play. And I just think it is kind of, there is some stuff I have issues with, like why wouldn't the cops chase after Bane because they just robbed the exchange and they killed somebody, versus like, oh, a guy who killed Harvey Dent. Well, I mean, you can go after both. I would have said that if I was the guy. I would have been like, all right, let's go after both. I do like though them chasing after Batman. I thought that was a cool sequence. I love, whenever Batman fights Bane, and it reminds me of Batman like night. I think it's Nightfall, wherever he like takes Batman, he breaks his back. I'm like, that's so cool, yay! And he rips. I remember just like when he's punching his mask, and then you can just tell Bruce Wayne's done when he's punching that mask and he rips the mask off. I'm like, that is so cool. And then, of course, whenever, Bruce Wayne has to, like, takes him in, like, and drops him in, like, the pit. And he has to sit there and retrain and re-heal himself when he gets out. And then, of course, Bane's wreaking havoc on Gotham, especially when he tells Fox, he goes, you're going to come down here. And he's like, I refuse. And then he holds a gun to, like, one of the board members. And he goes, there's 8 other ways. I only need one. There's 8 others up there waiting. And then like him just blowing up all the bridges and everything at the national anthem with the football, like that's just such a great sequence. And then him just taking over the city is just so badass and everything. And I don't like Bruce Wayne losing everything. I understand like him losing, like Alfred just says fuck off, I don't like this. And I hate that more because it makes Alfred look like an asshole, and I don't like that Alfred would do that. That's the one thing I had an issue with that. And I had an issue with, okay, Bruce Wayne loses everything, but they say, oh, we could prove this as fraud, but why don't they prove it as fraud? I understand, like, but you could have the resources, and he has the lawyers and everything, and it's like, oh, they shut his power off. I'm like, even if you're broke, I mean, you could still, like, I mean, it's like the power, I mean, like, oh, he gets his car possessed, like, some of that stuff doesn't make sense logically, okay, like that, like, I wouldn't think even if he's broke, he wouldn't, his car, because he owns his car, and he owns his house and everything, so, like, I mean, they let him keep the estate, but they cut his power off, but I'm like, he's not that broke where he can't, like, the power bill. Like, I just feel like they're just trying, like, oh, so he's broke. See, he's very broke. I do like, though, whenever him and the flirtatious relationship with Catwoman from the beginning and everything. And, like, when the police show up, because the police have nothing to do for, like, the movie, because they're like, oh, up until Bane shows up, they're like, well, we're going to have to chase after overdue library books. And then they're like, and there's, like, everybody shows up. And I thought that was pretty cool and everything. And I like how Bane is, like, in the sewer, and he goes, search him. And he says, your thing was to bring him here. He says, search him, and then I will kill you. And I liked it. And the whole airplane sequence at the beginning is so great when Bane just hijacks the airplane. At first, I didn't understand why he would do it, but it's still a cool sequence. But then you find out it's basically to, like, fake his death to make it look like and just that whole thing. And I love the big twist at the end when it's Talia al Ghul. Miranda Tate is really Talia al Ghul, and they're basically going to blow up the city and kill everybody to fulfill her father's plan. That's a cool idea, and I love how like Bane, she's just walking like a badass and everything, and then of course she says, and then Bane gets killed by Catwoman. And then like she's just basically, and then Batman shoots her off until she breaks her, and then she breaks in half and then dies. I thought that was great, and then how Batman fakes his own death and everything, and then becomes a symbol of hope for the city. That I love. I love how it ends where Batman's legacy, even though he's gone, his legacy will continue. I love that aspect of it. Although I don't like the fact is that they just kind of chicken out at the end and make Bane a henchman again, where it's like, oh, the whole time he wasn't really the mastermind, he was the henchman. Talia was the mastermind. I'm like, oh, fuck off. But I do like the twist that she is in the movie and she is like this. But I hate that they still made Bane a henchman. They just kill him in like the dumbest way where he just gets blown away. But like, I think it's still a great movie and I still love this movie a lot. And I love how he beats Bane at the end and the cops versus the criminals. Those are some great stuff. And I love Scarecrow's cameo at the end where he makes people walk, like Commissioner Gordon goes, death or exile. And it's the same thing where and Gordon's like, looks like he says death then. He goes, looks that way. He goes, death by exile. I thought that was great and everything. And I like how there's this one cop, Foley, that just keeps like, oh, I'm going to take your job, Gordon. And at the end, he teams up with Gordon, and then he gets killed by Talia al Ghul. I thought that was great and everything. And I do think the movie, I do kind of wish, I hated that how Bruce just nods to him and everything at the end. Alfred, like, I'm okay. I kind of wish he would have went and hugged out or something. And also, Alfred feels like an asshole when he sees his grave. He goes, I trusted you, Mike. I trusted you. There's just some issues with this movie that I have. Like, first, also, how did Batman get to the city? Did he walk across the ice because the bridges are blown? Did he, like, go, like, there's no way. I mean, did he sneak from an underground tunnel and crawl through? I mean, just, there's some stuff in this movie that I had issues with. But I do think the movie's really great. I highly recommend it. Yeah, if you could turn the plot holes off, it's still a fantastic movie and a fantastic conclusion. If I had to give this movie a grade, I'm going to give it a B+.
Sharpton for president, y'all. I'm outie.
Jesse Jackson for VP.